Hey, I'm David and this is Adobe UXP Things You Need to Know number 12. Today I'm going to tell you about React JS, and I will take the chance to announce a brand new course of mine aptly titled Adobe UXP Plugins Development with React JS. Build products and create a business in the Adobe Creative Cloud Marketplace and beyond. So far in this series, I've only used vanilla JavaScript, mostly to keep it simple, but in the real world, a large part of plugin developers don't like to reinvent the wheels themselves and end up using a framework. And guess what? React.js is the most popular JavaScript library, at least according to the Stack Overflow Survey Edition 2021. Even more popular than jQuery. Check that out. By the way, React.js is a library, not a framework, such as Vue.js or Angular. Do you know the difference? A library is something that you plug in your code, whereas a framework is something you plug your code into. Subtle but meaningful difference. In other words, your code uses a library, whereas your code is used by a framework. This is what's generally referred to as inversion of control. And according to this definition, it turns out that React.js
es leviosa, not leviosa.
Is in fact a library, i.e. some code that enhances regular JavaScript, adding useful features you can or cannot use, but it doesn't require you to buy into some very opinionated way to structure your source code as frameworks generally do. So what kind of features have made React.js so popular over the years? Well, first of all, components. A handy way to bundle into a custom element bits of user interface and logic, such as this example where into a div you have a heading, a slider, buttons, all those are components. And creating a component is as easy as writing a function. A special function that in React land can return markup, that is to say, HTML elements. So the buttons function that you can then use as a buttons element returns a div with a couple of spectrum buttons. This is referred to as JSX, JavaScript Syntax Extension, or JavaScript XML. Those components can be passed then properties by the parent, and they can use them, for instance, to display values using the curly braces interpolation, or then do whatever they have to do with them. So this toggle button here has a message and a bigger attribute, passing this click me and true, which by the way is a string, and those are received as properties into the toggle button function, then destructured and used in the component to set spectrum button text and then assign a couple of classes. Then there are hooks that are special React functions that can give components some superpower. For instance, you can create a state, a reactive property alongside with this setter that is able to trigger a component re-render when the property changes. In this example, is a boolean stored in this state. And depending on its value, a different string is displayed in the spectrum action button. Then the boolean is flipped in the button onClick handler via its setter, set is on, and so the button string changes accordingly. The key concept here is reactivity, hence the name of the library. You are building declarative interfaces based on data, interfaces that are going to reflect changes, to react to changes in the data as they happen. This is opposed to imperative code style, where you have to explicitly impart instruction to the UI on what to do and when to do it. Obviously, there's much more to React than component and hooks, but thanks to them and to JSX, that is to say the possibility to use JavaScript to compute HTML code, you're able to build remarkably powerful user interfaces with very little effort. For all your needs, there is a large ecosystem of plugins. Take state management as an example, the unique place to store reactive data that is accessible to all components no matter their parent-child relation. React doesn't provide you with a built-in state management feature, but you can easily plug in the library you like the most among the available ones maintained by the community. Redux, Recoil, MobX, Zustand, you name it. Now let me try a psychic experiment. I'm reading your mind and I hear the question, why React.js and not Vue, Angular, Svelte, or whatever? Well, the answer is because Adobe. And you might not like this at first, but let me explain. UXP, as we have seen over and over throughout the series, is heavily inspired by Standard, but it shouldn't be considered a browser environment. Hence, not everything that works in a browser is to be expected to automatically work in a UXP plugin. As an example, until very, very recently, there wasn't a document create event method, which is what Vue.js version 3 relies upon. Why was it missing? Yeah, because the UXP team has to willingly implement features, and that one didn't happen to be high priority to them. There are a lot of features to implement. And as a result, for almost a year after the UXP announcement, you couldn't even load Vue.js version 3, but only version 2. Keep that in the back of your mind for a moment. It also happens that React.js is exactly what Adobe uses for their own first-party features, like for instance, the welcome screen or the new file dialog and the neural filters interfaces. All UXP plugins. And you can bet that if React next version is going to need some whatever browser API that didn't make into UXP yet, that very feature is going to be implemented at once because Adobe won't risk neural filters to crash because of it, right? On the other hand, any feature might take months to be implemented if it's not high priority to Adobe, as it's happened to the document create event. What I'm saying is that not only React is a solid choice thanks to the popularity of the library in the JavaScript ecosystem and the amount of available resources, but given its adoption by the Adobe's engineering teams, it has to be considered the safest choice support-wise. With any other framework, although they might work, you're more on your own. The framework of your choice might or might not work now and might stop working when its newer version is released, as it happens in the switch between Vue.js 2 to Vue.js 3. Some months ago, I was chatting with a developer friend of mine, and they said something like, I will start with vanilla JavaScript UXP plugins, and when I'm familiar with the environment, I will try to approach React.js, because, I don't want too much on my plate at once. Now, although it might sound considerate at first, I don't buy it, because in my humble opinion, there is a better approach. On the one side, learning a tool such as React, by the way, to me, React is just a tool. I'm not a zealot. I'm not interested in JavaScript frameworks or of religion. Learning a tool such as React for React's sake in some abstract, generic environments like let's build a to-do app or a Reddit clone is always going to be an inferior way compared to learning the tool in the actual context in which you're going to use it, that is to say, a UXP plugin. Not only you're going to save a huge amount of time, but it sucks way less. This provided that somebody, like yours truly here, has figured out a learning path that combines UXP and React.js in such a way that you're presented with a UXP problem and given a gradually more complex React tool to solve it. So hopefully next time you run into the same kind of problem in your own UXP plugins, it'll come natural for you to reach out for that same React tool to hammer it. Moreover, there is a small-ish subset of React features that allow you to accomplish a great deal of good in the UXP environment. This overlapping area, the sweet spot of React features that matter the most in UXP plugins dev, is evident only after you've drawn the two circles, i.e. you've learned the two topics separately. But while you're drawing, i.e. learning them on your own, you have really no idea whether the React.js topic you're approaching is going to be of fundamental importance, marginal, or just a waste of time. Wouldn't it be better to start from this relatively approachable core of super important topics instead, dealt with in the UXP plugin context to optimize your energies and time? And this is precisely the Adobe UXP plugins development with React.js course agenda. The course subtitle is Build Products and Create a Business in the Creative Cloud Marketplace and Beyond, because there's a fat section on the business of UXP plugins from mundane but fundamental topics such as VAT, e-commerce providers, and so on, that I wish somebody told me when I started many years ago, up to a comparison of marketing strategies with examples from a barely average marketeer, such as myself, and a very, very successful one, such as Michael Bruni-Groff, the author of the logo package for Adobe Illustrator. And by very successful, I mean in the six figures range. The course home is at psscripting.com, then find the link to the Adobe UXP plugins development with React JS. And by the way, there is a wonderful foreword to the book by Kerry Schott, who is the UXP Principal Product Manager at Adobe Inc. Thanks again, Kerry. So what's in the course? Well, first of all, a book around 300 pages, PDF, beautifully typeset with LaTeX, in case you're curious, which I'm sure you're not, which is the main reference with all the content. And then there are 17 recordings, about 5.5 hours of screencasts, me live coding, solving problems, debugging, and so on. And then there are 16 demo plugins with fully commented code and also an automated build system for both development and production. Everything is thoroughly discussed in the book. The course is offered in 3 different editions: the basic, the cheapest one with just the book and the code, the complete that adds 5.5 hours of video tutorials, and I also offer an enterprise package for businesses with a license for teams up to 10 seats strong and the possibility to download the video tutorials that otherwise are for streaming only. This is a very important project for me, so I plan to keep the book and the videos up to date with all the new things that will happen in UXP, and I really hope that many developers will find this useful. Thanks so much to everyone who has supported me so far. Clicky stuff in the description below. See you in the next one. Bye.